Hi, I'm Fenev. Did you know your anime takes are right? Miyazaki says they are, and so do I. I believe until proven mid, every person is entitled to a hot take. And that's why I fight for you, anime fans. Subscribe to ForneverWorld, and don't forget to hit that bell. I must go, must leave this house. I must go, the time is now. I must go, it's time to get out. Okay, so the ending of Better Call Saul, the finale, the cap of a legacy of a franchise just finished airing last night as of the recording of this video. Episode 13 of Season 6, Saul Gone. And I just gotta keep it all the way thorough and honest with you guys. This show has meant so much to me. Like, granted, already I've been a Breaking Bad fan since it pretty much came out back in the day. I remember, actually, to get just off rip, we're going in, so to speak, a little bit personal with you guys. I remember when Breaking Bad initially came out over on the AMC channel. I was at the time living out of a motel, so my life was a little bit in shambles, and seeing this little wacky show, and that's being very, very generous to call it wacky, because, it was extreme. By no means am I trying to downplay it. It kind of gave me a little bit of something to do, something to watch at the time. You see Walter and Jesse and all that stuff. So I've been into this verse, invested into it for, 14 years now? So this is a long time coming, because when Breaking Bad ended, and I can't remember exactly when it was, but that it was announced that Better Call Saul was coming, at first I was skeptical, just like Bob Odenkirk said himself, like, can this really work? Like, would this actually even be that interesting to be able to sustain itself? Like, granted, Saul was hilarious. Saul was such a great character, interesting character, but for the most part, you just always thought, that's the shady lawyer that has a couple of jokes. But nevertheless, I didn't expect that Better Call Saul could carry on, let alone even ever in my wildest dreams that I think that it could match up to the quality and just greatness that was Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad, a lot of people for the longest time said was the greatest show on American television history, and honestly I would concur with that. Breaking Bad is a masterpiece in and of itself from start to finish. So Better Call Saul had a lot of obstacles and hurdles to overcome because of, it's kind of hard to break out of the shadow of its predecessor that was basically a phenomenon in its own right and was just critically panned as absolute greatness. But Better Call Saul, as each season went on, in my opinion, it progressively got better. Season 1, of course, you're at the beginning, Jimmy McGill, you're getting to understand. I'll be real, I was a little bit confused when it first started. I was like, Jimmy McGill, James McGill, who the fuck is that? That's Saul Goodman, what are we doing here? And then when we start to learn that initially he went by James McGill, and over time he switched up with the Saul Goodman name and whatnot, it was like, okay, I don't know if this is going to work, but it did. It worked very well, and I don't want to give you guys a history lesson. You probably already seen Better Call Saul. If you haven't, I'm going to warn you that I'm going to talk about a lot of things in extensive detail about this series, so yeah, you've been warned. Spoilers will fly. Now, I also happened to see El Camino just recently. I know that came out a few years ago. I never got around to it. I heard it wasn't that good, so I kind of just avoided it. But when I caught up with Better Call Saul about 3 weeks ago, while I was waiting for the next episodes, I was like, all right, let's knock this bad boy out the park. Let's see what happens with Jesse Pinkman. And for the most part, that movie, it wasn't as bad as people said. A lot of people said that it was mid, it was trash, all that stuff. It was a decent film. It was interesting to see what actually became of Jesse Pinkman, see that he had a couple of extra obstacles to overcome before he was truly free. I think maybe the Todd stuff was a bit jarring and overwhelming. They made it seem like if Todd was this, mainstay of the Jesse character, but thankfully it still for the most part worked. It wasn't like horrible, it wasn't even bad. I thought it was genuinely good. It wasn't as great as Breaking Bad, but I feel like if anything, El Camino would have been so much better and so much just more fleshed out, and I think people would have accepted it more if it was even just a miniseries, 6-episode miniseries of, hey, the Jesse Pinkman story, life after Breaking Bad. So that was an okay one, and like I said, Breaking Bad was legendary. But Better Call Saul, honestly, I don't feel like I'm jumping out the window and saying this, I think most people will agree with me that Better Call Saul stands probably better than Breaking Bad. It's just like, because it has such an incredible launching pad like Breaking Bad, maybe that's what adds to it. The lore, the fact that you know when Gus Fring shows up, when Mike shows up, all of these things, getting the origins of them, that's probably what adds to the epicness of Better Call Saul. So maybe you could argue that if you take away Breaking Bad, will it be as grandiose? I don't know. Obviously, I went in watching Breaking Bad prior, so I'd be biased to say otherwise, but there's only one thing about Better Call Saul, because let me throw this out here as well, because I just want to clear all my ducks. Better Call Saul is a masterpiece. Honestly, it's one of the greatest things on television. If anything, like I said, I put it probably even above Breaking Bad. Time will tell whether or not that opinion sticks, but as it stands right now, I feel like Better Call Saul is better than Breaking Bad. But there is one thing that another part of my brain doesn't allow me to fully just be in the moment of what everybody else is feeling, because I can look at it from a critical standpoint, but then there's one thing that is unrelated to the critical aspect, as a narrative, as a story, all of that stuff. It is 11 out of 10. Everything about it is 11 out of 10, except one thing that happened towards the end of Better Call Saul, and we'll get to that in a bit. But my God, dog, some of the things that I absolutely loved about this. Shout outs to Bob Odenkirk. If you ever happen to come across this clip, I doubt you would, but if you do, I just want you to know that you rose up the ranks of my favorite actors of all time through and through, by yourself. What you've done, granted, of course, I'm not saying that, to discredit the crew and staff and the writing, but just in general, from the facial expressions, the body language, playing this character, because I've seen interviews of Bob Odenkirk outside of, the show and outside of the character. He really knows how to jump into the role of between Jimmy McGill and Saul Goodman. He plays both of those characters very well. Now, a lot of people might be saying, what do you mean between Jimmy McGill and Saul Goodman? They're the same person. No, technically, yes, that's just him going under another moniker, but you see, as the evolution of the series goes on, the evolution of this character when he eventually morphs into that one. The character that you see in Breaking Bad of Saul Goodman isn't fully realized until towards the end of season 6, towards the end of the series as a whole. Jimmy McGill, is somebody that is fighting internal conflicts through and throughout the series of trying to fight that other side, right? And I felt like for the longest time, up until extremely recently, that Better Call Saul had a message that resonated so well with me to the point where I was inspired. And there was this single clip from Better Call Saul. I remember when I watched the episode, I recorded it with my phone, this little clip that just really inspired me to the point of like, kind of like the classic tales. If you watch anime and manga, if you've seen like Naruto, the person that was cursed with not being great and overcoming the obstacles of destiny. That was something that I truly felt Jimmy McGill embodied. The fact that, yeah, he's a screw up. James McGill was a little bit different. He didn't play by the rules. He did a lot of things that some might argue was shady. The whole slippin' Jimmy. That was something that, he was different. He was what some might say a fuck up, so to speak, especially in comparison to his incredible lawyer of a brother, Chuck. Chuck was the guy that was well accomplished and would have to come out and bail out his little brother Jimmy from situations, the whole sunroof situation that still to this day, oh my God. But I felt like the message of Better Call Saul was constantly through and through that despite the fact that he's a screw up, despite the fact that he is different from everybody else, while, Kim Wexler is straight up, even though we find out more about her, but Kim Wexler is playing straight, the straight and narrow for the most part, again, until she's a little bit diving into her darker side. Howard Hamlin, all of these characters, they're straight shooters, they play by the books, and if they take the losses, they take the losses. While Jimmy is like, I could see that I'm gonna take a loss if I go straight through there because they don't accept me. I'm not accepted in this world because of the mistakes I've made in the past. So if they're not gonna let me through that door, then I'm gonna just go around and I'm gonna cut every corner I possibly have to in order to get around and get to that same destination. That right there resonated so well with me and really hit home to the heart of, it's okay if you've made mistakes. you can still overcome and do what you gotta do. There's a scene, what I was just referencing earlier, where I believe it was just after a meeting that Jimmy had at H&M and Howard and all them, and it was basically recommending these kids for scholarships. And despite the fact that Jimmy gave a heartfelt, vote of confidence for this one kid, ultimately because that kid had got caught shoplifting or something like that, they didn't want to give the scholarship, and they didn't give the scholarship to the kid. And Jimmy races off as the kid is leaving and gives this speech to this kid that really freaking hit home, where he basically says,
"Pat you on the head, but they are never, ever letting you in. But listen, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, because you don't need them.
Facts.
So what?
You're gonna take it.
You're gonna do whatever it takes. Do you hear me? You are not gonna play by the rules.
Nope.
You're gonna go your own way. You're gonna do what they won't do.
Facts. You're gonna cut corners. Gonna win.
They're on the 35th floor.
So what?
You're gonna be on the 50th floor. You're gonna be looking down on them. And the higher you rise,
More they're gonna hate you. Good. Good.
rub their noses in. You make them suffer. You don't matter all that much to them. So what?
So what?
So what? Screw that.
Screw 'em.
Remember,
The winner takes it all. And that right there, that message, that clip, when he said that, I was like, yo, that's facts. That's facts. There are gatekeepers, there are barriers in this world that people are not gonna let you in because of mistakes you made, because of who you are. And I loved that about Better Call Saul. From every season, whether it starts off that he's just, this public defender that's making, chump change, to when he starts slowly but surely diving into the criminal world, so to speak. And even there was a message that certain aspects of the work that he did throughout all of, Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, helping out all of these petty criminals and whatnot, it added to those people actually cared about him. And that was something that, like I said, I'm just so torn about one thing. Everything else, this is a masterpiece. If anybody takes this as I'm shitting on the series, or I don't know about, man, get out of here with that. Because I'm telling you right now, Better Call Saul might be the best thing that you've ever watched on television. It is just so freaking incredible. The writing, the everything about it. Lalo Salamanca, getting the freaking backstory to the Salamanca family, seeing Tuco again. All of it was just legendary. Gus Fring, the beginnings of his meth operation. Well, not beginnings, but when he started expanding, and when he had all those German people come out and was building that hole in the ground. All of it was just absolutely chef's kiss to quality writing and storytelling. The fact that Vince Gilligan and the crew, they were able to take small pieces of, like, hey, back in Breaking Bad, Saul one time said, no, it wasn't me, did Lalo sent you, or about Nacho, all of those little tiny elements, and make full-on blown incredible characters out of them is absolute genius. Like, this series just honestly means so much to me. The dynamics of the relationship between Jimmy and Chuck, boy oh boy, because there's so much that I feel it's obvious, but maybe it's not to people, of what ultimately morphed Jimmy into that. Like, they had that conversation in the finale, right? I know I'm all over the place. Don't care. It is what it is. This is me right now. They had that conversation between Saul, or Jimmy, whatever you want to call him at that point, and Walter, where Walter ultimately, they're talking about the time machine, and Walter's questioning him basically about regrets. Well, he started off with the time machine, and when he asked him about his regrets was about like a knee injury or something. And Walter says, oh, so you was always like this. And a part of me feels like that's BS, because you see through and through that while there was a side of Jimmy McGill being a piece of shit that pretty much is hidden throughout all of Breaking Bad, Saul Goodman is the mask that he put on after Kim Wexler left him in the dust, which we'll talk about Kim a little more in a bit. But ultimately, he was trying so hard. He tried and tried and tried. And at every turn, it was basically the, so to speak, metaphor of his brother, the establishment itself, Charles McGill, that would constantly be a brick wall in his face. Every time he tried to play it up and up, he had, for starters, if he would have just been embraced by his brother, if Chuck would have not been the piece of shit that he was, always looking down on his bro of like, nah, mom loved me for the smarts. You're the comedian. Stay in your lane. If he would have just embraced him, if he would have given him a job at HHM, things probably wouldn't have been like this. Like the fact that Jimmy did all of those things for his brother. You're telling me that he's always been a bad person? He's always been somebody that makes mistakes like everybody else. He's always been somebody that maybe is impulsive and just wants to get to the destination and maybe doesn't necessarily like the process. But he was a good person. It wasn't until basically Chuck tried to screw him over and take away his practice of license. It wasn't until Kim Wexler, after everything that they've been through, decided, you know what, this life ain't for me. I'm gonna go to Florida and be with this lame ass motherfucker and say screw you, that he finally said, nah, mask on, that's it, it's over. James McGill was buried because of two people. It wasn't Howard Hamlin, it wasn't anybody else, it wasn't Lalo, it wasn't Fring, it wasn't Mike, it was his brother Chuck. That was the beginning of it, and the absolute end of it, where Saul Goodman completely took over, was Kim leaving him. So when he's telling in the courtroom, when he's talking to the DA and all of that stuff, and he's saying that he is a victim, he is a victim. I don't care what people say. When he was in the courtroom and he was doing all that, half the shit that he said in the finale in the courtroom that screwed him over was basically him trying to save Kim's ass, was basically him trying to say, I'm the villain, put all of it on me, and basically having that flip of the switch of the bad guy having a change of heart at the 9th hour and the same fuck all of that shit. But bottom line, Jimmy McGill was a good person that was wrong, and ultimately that dark side of him took over because he was a good person that tried so hard every day, where he was doing a lot of those things. Everybody has dreams, right? Everybody wants to get to some point, whether it is that you want to be rich, whether it is that you want the big house you want the nice car that you want, and Jimmy McGill wanted all of that. And every time he tried to play by the rules, by the book, it was essentially like if the hand of destiny would say no. And the hand of destiny was, again, some of the people around him that he loved so much. Chuck, Kim. While granted Kim indulged in the darkness, look at it, Kim eventually was damn near a darker demon than Jimmy. It was Kim that kept on pushing the Howard Hamlin situation. He would have left Howard Hamlin the hell alone after a certain point, and it was Kim that kept on pushing the D-Day, so to speak. She even threw everything away to push that D-Day. So despite the fact that the narrative wants you to feel bad for Kim and look at it like, man, you know, it was that damn James McGill, it was that damn Saul Goodman, it was her that pushed the Howard Hamlin situation that led to Howard being there that night when Lalo Salamanca came and blew his cap off. It wasn't Jimmy that pushed that. That was Kim. And then after the freaking whole catastrophe or whatnot, she decides, I don't want to do none of this no more. How was that Saul that did that, or James McGill? It wasn't. The fact that Chuck didn't embrace his brother, the fact that Chuck was a piece of shit and Jimmy had to go through hell in that courtroom with the battery and Hugh Babineau, all of that stuff, that was because of Chuck. They pushed him into that. And, you know, call it, if you want to say that to a certain degree, I'm kind of like a Garo. I'd rather keep it real with you guys than put on a mask and lie and say, I'm okay with everything. I want to stress, masterpiece, but the message that I feel got tainted with the finale is where I have a problem with it. Because let's get into it, my problem with it. That this masterpiece gets me upset. The fact that, once again, it seems as though the bad guy doesn't get to win. That's my problem. I'm like Garo from One Punch Man. I want to see the guy that, yeah, they paint him as a bad guy, but he's a victim that ultimately took life by the horns and said, fuck it. If this is the way that life is pushing me towards, if this is the only way to achieve my goddamn dreams, then I'm going to go full force. And the fact that in the finale, spoilers, you know, you've been warned, in the finale, he whittled the DA and all them down to 7 years. 7 years, and he would have got out, and James, you know, Jimmy Saul is a very, very crafty man. He would have been able to do something else, and maybe it would have led to him doing more messed up things. But nevertheless, the fact that in the 9th hour in the courtroom for Kim Wexler, he decides, you know what, I'm gonna spill my guts. It's almost as if Chuck won in the end because he got Jimmy exactly where he wanted him, out of practicing law and his life completely removed from ever being able to have a life. 86 fucking years from 7 because he wanted to come and play hero for Kim Wexler, and basically his character went full circle. I understand the great quality writing of his character went full circle of, no, that was Jimmy that came in at the very end and said, nah dog, you know, this is it, this is the end of the road, this is what we're gonna do. I get it, but to me it almost feels like it's like a switch that goes off. It reminds me of other series in the past of where the villain at the 9th hour decides, I'm actually a good guy, dog. Like, yes, you were a good guy, but you were scot-free, dog. 7 years in the best possible prison that you picked out yourself, and you threw it all away while you're there in the yard and they're screaming, yeah, Saul, Saul. Kim is getting her back blown out over there in Miami and Florida and shit like that. That's the difference. Where I look at it from a practicality standpoint, I look at it like the message basically says in the end that if you don't stick to the rules, if you don't play by what the establishment has set up, you're either gonna A, end up dead like Walter White, B, you're gonna end up in Alaska like freaking oh god, like Jesse, or you're gonna end up doing time and self-destructing, because that was what it was. It was self-destruction at the very end. I get it, some people, they like to go by what the narrative has painted as, no, he did the right thing, you know, crime doesn't pay. I fully went into this finale, I'm just being real, you know, you can say I'm lying or whatever, don't care, but I fully went into this finale looking at it from, okay, if these are the paths that everybody led from the Breaking Bad verse, with Walter dying, he was dying from the beginning with the cancer, so that was the ending that fit best for him. Jesse finally escaping and being free to live a normal life, then his fate had to be, because he was always with the law with his brother and stuff like that, then it had to be that he went to jail. Like, I knew going into the finale, no, you know, Jimmy's going to have to do some jail time. I was fine with that. I was even like, yo, he did it, he got him down to 7 years, he'll, you know, do this 7, boom, go back to, you know, normal life, not be running from the feds, and maybe make some, you know, big moves afterward. It was only the fact that it went into what I felt like, granted, was perfect for the way the narrative have set up, but goes against some of the message of Better Call Saul for me, that I had an issue with. And I don't know how else to tell you guys that this is a masterpiece, that my only aspect of having any sort of issue with is at the 9th hour, the message, I felt betrayed. I felt like I was rooting for this guy that was a fuck up through and through to finally catch a W, and at the 9th hour the fuck up decided to have a change of heart and become his true self, which again, that's all been set out for it. And maybe this is just a me thing, and by golly, if you feel that way, so be it. I'm not saying that this is a bad finale by any means. It's a great finale, you could argue perfect. Vince Gilligan did it again. But the fact that I looked at this series as hope for fuck-ups everywhere, for people that made mistakes to be able to win in the end, and it basically comes out and says, crime don't pay, lads. You'll either die or end up self-destructing. That was where the issue lies with me. But you know, with all that being said, this is still one of the greatest series ever. This is still something that if they ever decided to explore this verse, the Breaking Bad Better Call Saul verse ever again, I will always tune in regardless. If there's something where overpopulation happens and Saul gets out in 3, I will scream and cry, yes! But yeah, there's where I stand with it. Absolutely amazing, phenomenal series. I just wish that Saul would have won in the end. When he told the district attorney turned attorney, or district attorney, or whatever he was, that, yo, I know how this is gonna end. It's gonna end up with me coming out on top. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I was like, yes, Saul ain't done yet. And it was Kim Wexler. You know, they say sometimes it'll be the woman that'll sink a man's ship, and it was. And either way, still, no matter what, I cannot do anything but stress that Better Call Saul was phenomenal, and arguably around some people definitive, to the most part for me, better than Breaking Bad, and just a phenomenal series. Shout out to Bob Odenkirk, shout out to the gentleman that played Mike, the dude that played Gustavo Fring. That was so freaking amazing to see him become an integral part. Nacho, Lalo, Kim Wexler, even though Kim, why Kim, why couldn't you have just rode with Saul? Amazingness. Let me know what you guys think. Share your journey with me, the Breaking Bad verse, Better Call Saul verse, your thoughts on El Camino. I want to hear all of it. And if you disagree with me, that's totally fine. I'm not saying that my answer is the right answer. please let me know why. Let's have a respectful conversation on one of the greatest masterpieces out there. By all means, I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day, and remember the golden rule. Crime don't pay, according to the Better Call Saul verse. I don't know. Shout outs to Jimmy McGill and Better Call Saul, because no matter what, even in prison, they're still saying, Better Call Saul! Have an awesome one.
I have a dream, alone in my room as I sit with the tea. Couldn't possibly think what I often see, and you don't even know how I often blink. Lights be flashing and looking at me, such an odd, unique, yet I'm so unique, and you're looking at me. If the walls could talk, they would probably read bleak, and I'd probably say, bitch, get the fuck off me.